Hello, everybody. All right, happy 4th of July. Hope everybody's having a good day. Today, remembering why we're all here. Um, anyways, we're going to give people a few minutes to come in. Hopefully, they'll come in soon. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on some music, take care of a couple of things, and then when I get back, we'll go over what's on tap for tonight. With that, let me just do this. I want one more little thing here just to remind. Alrighty then. Oh, let's see. We're 2.5 minutes here, so let me try one more time here, see what I can find of. Alright. Okay, so now 3 minutes in, so go over what's on. So I'm gonna go over a couple articles tonight from Bleeding Fool. Comics related, of course. First off, Batman and the Two-Edged Sword of Authority, and also CBR's Reckoning. So a couple of interesting stories there. I know the CBR story is done by Chris Braley. We also will have, of course, the wrestling wrap up and this day in each history at the end. So I hope we'll get some more people in here soon. But I know with it being, of course, a holiday night, everybody's out blowing stuff up. So but hopefully we'll get some people in to at least say hi. With that, I believe we will go ahead and get ourselves started now. Get right into this. And I can find the cursor, of course. All right, so let's get to the first story here. We're almost about 4.5 minutes into this, so. All right, Batman and the Two-Edged Sword of Authority. Article by Gene Phillips, published yesterday, I guess, July 3rd. All right. For the first 40 years of the Batman feature, the Cowled Crusader followed the pattern of most comic book heroes, in that he never made injudicious usages of his great skills and resources. Then, as I chronicled in From Batman to Bat Dad, the 80s began showing a hero capable of abusing his authority in various ways, whether a given writer believed that abuse justifiable or not. I also briefly referenced Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, yet I didn't include it in the abuse of authority category, even though I admitted that Miller's version of Batman also diverged from the quote unquote nice guy in a scary costume unquote model favored by 70s bat authors like Denny O'Neil and Steve Englehart. Miller, though, was doing something more complicated with Batman than ever, than either stating, quote, authority is bad, unquote, or authority is good, unquote, unquote. Now, mind you, though, he says this happened over the first 40 years. Now, I hadn't seen what he presented, but what I can tell you just from the early days, Batman was kind of a darker hero. You know, he did actually kill, so first statement there might be a little. I mean, yes, during the Silver Age, he was toned down quite a bit, due in large part to the Comics Code Authority. But early on in the Golden Age, he was just as dark as any hero. Quote, if I had to boil down Miller's position to a simple trope, it might read something like, quote, authority, like the power used to support it, is always a two-edged sword, unquote. We know that the future world of the Dark Knight Returns, TDKR, is one that has rejected vigilante heroes, allowing only Superman to remain covertly active as long as the Man of Steel follows the government's orders. The broad implication is that such exemplary individuals have been shackled so that bureaucrats can protect their own power, even if the man in the street suffers from the absence of costume crime fighters. The consequences of this misuse of authority are implicitly global, though we only see Gotham City as a symbol of the general decline. I guess here's a panel from Frank Miller's work. For 10 years, Batman fades into the shadow of Bruce Wayne, attempting to put his obsessive mission behind him, and the result of his absence is the spread of the mutants. So the Dark Knight returns, and as he does, so he even brings back parts of his old mythology. The Batmobile, a new Robin, but does he solve all the problems by returning and vanquishing the mutants? Obviously not. The pop psychologist Wolper is meant to seem a complete idiot when he claims that Batman's presence brings into being evildoers like Two-Face and the Joker. And yet, after Batman defeats the mutant leader, some disaffected mutants from the Sons of the Batman and the Sons begin perpetrating crimes in their attempt to emulate the hero. Batman takes control of the Sons and channels their juvenile aggression into useful activities, though ironically only by following the same strategy as Superman, that of going undercover. It would be an overstatement to claim that other Bat authors sought to imitate Miller's specific aesthetic, for he was, without a doubt, a tough act to follow. Nevertheless, the 80s set the stage for reconsiderations of the Bat Authority in other ways as well. Though the 70s separation of Batman and the original Robin was amicable, the duo soon became more estranged. 3 years after Marv Wolfman showed the dynamic duo butting heads, DC editorial made the decision to promote a now teenaged Robin, Jason Todd, in 1983. This necessitated the 1984 rebranding of Dick Grayson Robin into the more mature figure of Nightwing, who staked out his territory in New Teen Titans. Hmm. All right, so let's see. We continue here. All right, so let's see. All right, so continuing on here. Then, as if to increase the acrimony, DC editorial took advantage of um, of the crisis reshuffling and ordered Max Allan Collins to rework the initially dull Jason Todd backstory. In the ham-fisted story of Batman number 408, 1987, the Joker wounds Dick Robin and almost kills him. While the young hero is recovering, Batman takes the rash action of quote unquote firing Grayson for his years-long position as Robin, from his years-long position as Robin. This became the revised rationale for Grayson to become Nightwing. Though, though I've the impression that subsequent writers have tended to ignore said rationale after getting rid of the experienced Robin, the caped crime fighter that impulsively decides to initiate a brand new Robin to the mantle, a reworked version of Jason Todd. Batman's motive? He likes that Jason has the nerve to try stealing the Batmobile's hubcaps. Despite this increase in tension between the former partners, I believe the seeding of the Robin title from Dick to Jason went off smoothly enough. The same basic pattern applied after Jason's notorious death in 1988, roughly 2 years after Frank Miller established that the Jason of his world had perished. When third Robin Tim Drake followed in Jason's footsteps in 1989. However, the next decade might have helped Nightwing's general attitude, for he finally got a shot at a series in 1995, which in turn led to various starring features, none of which invoked sharing space with either Batman or the Teen Titans. Yet sometimes even inferior stories have strange persistence. Grayson had appeared irregularly as an older Robin in the first three seasons of Batman the Animated Series. For the fourth and last season, the writers decided to update the Batverse, establishing that Grayson had at some point rejected the Robin mantle and taken up the persona of Nightwing. This enabled them to concoct their own version of Tim Drake, who skewed much younger than his teenage comic version. Much like the age Robin in the Golden Age Bat comics, Tim remained Robin for the remainder of the episodes of the 97-98 season. And Nightwing made sporadic appearances, though none more consequential to the matter of Batman's authority than in the episode Old Wounds. Now, Old Wounds is where they, of course, kind of flash back to his last appearance. Where he would talk to Tim about why he ended up quitting as Robin. Now, here's the thing too, in terms of how the DCAU portrayed Tim Drake Robin. It is said what is said about it is that they kind of merged Tim and Jason Todd together into one character. The Tim Drake and the DCAU had a number of elements of Jason Todd, including coming from kind of having a criminal father there and engaging in criminal activity himself in some respects. Even though he had somewhat of and they even depicted not to the same degree. In other words, obviously because this was a kids cartoon, they couldn't really depict Joker outright killing Robin here, but they put it in such a way that you would think that he probably wished he had been killed, because which the plot line there became part of the plot in Return of the Joker, in which Joker had actually kidnapped Tim Drake and then warped his mind to the point to where he became Joker Jr. That's the DCAU version. Anyway, quote unquote, Old Wounds, written by Rich Fogel and directed by Kurt Gita, curiously resembled aspects of the short-lived Bat continuity created by Marv Wolfman back in 1980. If only in that Dick Grayson's experiences at college lead to estrangement from Bruce Wayne. The latter is again seen as being something of a jerk at times, though the matter of his authority proves more complex. The bulk of the episode is told in flashback. Tim Robin encounters some thugs committing a crime, and he gets some unmasked for help from Dick Nightwing. Tim takes his opportunity to grill Dick about his split from Batman. Batman is seen as more of a taskmaster to Robin than in the majority of the Bat's episodes. And at one point, he roughs up one of Joker's henchmen in front of the man's family. This bears a mild, possibly coincidental resemblance to a Wolfman scene where the Crusader intemperately roused the son of Lucius Fox in Batman number 330. But the Fogel Batman goes even further by interfering in Robin's love life. Back in the 1993 episode Shadow of the Bat, quote unquote, Batman the Animated Series had debuted its version of Batgirl, a Barbara Gordon who was the same age as Dick Grayson. I don't recall whether previous episodes had established that Dick and Barbara attended the same college, but that's one of the thesis of Old Wounds, unquote. Fogel also shows the two heroes enjoying a romantic relationship at the time, though neither knows of the other's costumed identity. Yeah. Well, in previous Bat mythos, of course, Barbara was a little like Dick, like, for example, in live action Batman series, you could argue that Dick was probably older high school, maybe college age level, maybe somewhere between, let's say, 16 and 21. Whereas Barbara Gordon was already depicted. Now I'm talking about the live action Batman series. Barbara Gordon was depicted as being probably in her in her early to mid 20s. And of course, this same depiction happened, of course, in Batman, the new Batman I believe, in both Filmation's Batman series and the new Batman Adventures. Um, so, in Dick Grayson's rage at Batman's ruthless action, he rants to Barbara about his mentor without specifying the offense. Barbara then seeks out Bruce Wayne, who's impressed by her loyalty to his ward, possibly because Wayne does know of Barbara's other identity. He takes the I think it's supposed to be preemptory, not peremptory, step of revealing to Barbara both his and Dick's true identities. Bruce never gets a chance to state just why he thinks this revelation will help the relationship of Dick and Barbara. For news comes that in the comes in that Joker's menacing the city with a new gizmo. Batman and Batgirl rush to combat the threat. Moments later, Dick arrives and learns from Alfred about the big reveal. As Robin, he arrives on the scene just in time to save Batgirl from death, after which the three heroes take down Joker. And if you guys haven't already, hey JR, hey Rick, hey JR, if you guys haven't already, of course, you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more people in here. Also, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability here. Hail Lord Xenu and hail Princess Xena, our only true saviors. And hail Mike and Rick. All right. Happy, well, for JR more than anything, I guess, happy 4th of July. Anyways, getting back to the article here. But then the real fight begins. Robin upbraids Batman for having permitted Barbara to endanger herself, ironically casting her as the inevitable victim, just as Batman had done to Dick in the Collins scripted Batman number 408. Robin refuses to listen to Batgirl's protestations of volunteering. Quote, "You don't know him the way I do. He manipulates, pulls strings, anything to get what he wants," unquote. It's fair to observe that Robin is probably less aggrieved about Barbara being endangered, and that Batman's penchant for treating Robin, now a grown man, like a submissive child. It will prove no surprise that for the TV show, the Dick Barbara romance ends here, as opposed to its long and complicated history in the comics. Dick Grayson discards the identity of Robin and later forges, with no specifics, the new identity of Nightwing. As we know, he got the inspiration for being Nightwing, as Nightwing was one of the heroes of Kandor and Superman. So I think that played into it a little bit there. The long flashback ends, but there's a different outcome than the usual, quote, "Batman's a big bully," unquote, trope. Nightwing and Robin encounter the same man whom Batman roughed up in the flashback, and the fellow now works as a guard at a Wayne facility. He credits Batman with quote unquote scaring him straight, in parentheses here, my words, and praises Bruce Wayne for always checking up on him and his family. Moments later, Dick's inevitable rapprochement with his mentor is heralded by a broadcast of the bat signal. The two young crime fighters respond by launching themselves into the sky via their bat grapplers, and their forms fade into the larger circle of the signal. The figurative aegis of the Batman, the implication I took was that though that Dick Grayson can become his own man, he will always be linked to his experiences with his obsessed mentor, even if his was not, as he puts it earlier, quote unquote, an ideal childhood. Let's see, where was that be? All right, so let's see. JR is Canadian too, Mike. Oh, okay. I didn't know if he was in America or I'm still hungover from Dominion Day. Yeah. Laugh out loud at JR. Hmm. All right, so, anyways, thank you for that clarification, Rick. That does help. Right, moving, move, get into the rest of this article here. Now, Fogel was not nearly as ambitious as Frank Miller, who in The Dark Knight Returns claimed that Batman was quote unquote too big to be judged by ordinary moral standards. Nevertheless, in quote unquote old wounds, any failures stemming from Batman's imperious actions come about because of the ruthless rigor that Batman applies to his own needs, um, which he also subverts to his mission. He wields a sword that to defend others, and he accepts that in some way or other the sword is very likely to cut him as well at some point. For me, this is the essence of real authority. Accepting the power has consequences, and that the alternative, that of doing nothing, is worse than any possible downsides. Interesting perspective there. There's also the old saying that, like, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, too. So, anyway, so that's that article. Um, so we'll get to the next article here. I said feel free to comment and or ask questions. Um, let's see now. 20. All right. I'll get through this then a bit. Get to this. All right. So here we go. CBR's Reckoning. Comic Book Resource shakes up its ideological staff. Article by Chris Braley, published yesterday. CBR.com. Comic Book Resources, also known as CBR, was founded by Jonah Weiland in 1995 and became a collection of blogs dedicated to academic and detailed comic book related discussions. Everything was great until 2016 when Valnet Inc., a Canadian based company, which also owns Screen Rant, which is, I believe, a pop culture news site, bought the site and relaunched it as CBR.com. Integrating the blog into the site, it didn't take long for the new owners to learn that they could get more views with clickbait than actual news. Here's an example. 10 reasons Captain Marvel is the best Avenger, in parentheses, and 10 others why it's Ms. Marvel. All right. Within a year, CBR brought on writer and activist Kieran Shiok, who soon began publicly attacking creators online, such as DC Comics artist Ethan Van Sciver, accusing him of being a quote unquote Nazi, based on art associated with a villain Van Sciver had drawn. Shiok wasn't joking, he meant it, and began demanding that DC Comics fire their longtime artist. And then I guess here's an All right, here are just tweets here attacking Ethan, of course. In response, Van Sciver denounced the claims, calling them evil, adding that, quote, these people who spread these images and claim that I'm a, in smaller quotes, Nazi are liars. They are lying flat out. They are liars who wish this industry wasn't tolerant of people who do not share their partisan political views, unquote. Coming in the comments reported that the origins of the libel were that Ethan Van Sciver had been attached to a sketchbook called Überalls. Colorist Moose Bauman eventually admitted that the book was his idea, not Van Sciver's, which should have put any further defamatory scuttlebutt to rest, and maybe even resulted in Shiach being fired from the CBR, parentheses, and Polygon, in parentheses there. But it didn't, and he wasn't reprimanded in any way, at least not immediately. Shiach, with a name like that, kind of reminds me of another term a lot of people like to use when they want to say, you know, they want to say, the other term, the B word for a female dog, you know. Would continue to write for both websites until the end of 2018. For his part, Shiach eventually fessed up to being an quote unquote idiot after his own failed crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter. But the admission was not related to his smearing of other indie creators. And Shiach wasn't the only ideologue and quote unquote serial harasser, in smaller quotes there, at CBR. That same year, the website smeared Alterna Comics publisher Peter Samedi over his decision to institute a social media policy and insisted their creators resist the urge to attack and insult fans. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good thing. In fact, they went after Peter pretty badly. Because I do remember hearing about the story where somebody actually called the cops on him. Somebody actually called the cops. He actually, during a live podcast, had the police show up at his door. I remember that story. I think they were claiming he was abusing his wife or something like that. So, what about the writer Ethan? What about the writer Ethan can only draw what is written for him to draw? What about the writer? Ethan can only draw what is written for him to draw. Yeah, they swatted him. Yeah, that's a term. Thank you, Rick. Let's see. The article was written in a way to make Samedi look like the bad guy, and Samedi demanded they remove the article. They eventually responded by softening the headline. So, yeah. So, okay. Anyways, and when they weren't attacking comic book companies or comic creators, CBR would attack the fandom themselves. Um, for instance, Here's an article explaining how, quote, Marvel's golden boy, unquote, Steve Rogers only decided to become Captain America for selfish desires, unquote. This is bait. After an enormous amount of pushback, CBR decided to delete that outrageous article. But fans' memories are long, and the internet is forever. And CBR was still a long way from being done trashing legacy comic book characters. Just 2 weeks later, they insisted that, quote, Marvel should stop selling Punisher merchandise, unquote, in order to stop police and military from wearing and displaying the Punisher logo. Regrettably, since the same toxic culture exists at Marvel, the legacy publisher eventually got around to doing precisely what the CBR headline demanded. Seems like CBR's business model has been attacking popular culture for a while, and while the damage was starting to take its toll, they were far from done. Just last summer, a pair of writers named Anthony Gramuglia and David Hart were publicly attacking indie comics creator Eric D. July and his ISO #1 graphic novel, taking issue with the price point of his enormously successful crowdfund campaign. This sort of harassment isn't out of character for Gramuglia when he's not writing for CBR, anime feminist, or a guy writing for anime feminist. Okay, that's an interesting one. Uh then for all we know, with the way the world is, maybe it's not a surprise. Probably something about him that maybe we all don't know. I mean, he attacked Ethan for the so-called Nazi stuff, yet he could only have drawn it if the writer had written the Nazi stuff. So why just attack Ethan and not the writer too? Well, I wouldn't know. I would imagine that the only answer I could give to that question, Rick, is maybe he didn't know who the writer, or maybe either one. Okay, so there's two answers I could give here. One, either he didn't know who the writer was, if it was a separate writer, or two, maybe he thought that Ethan was the writer as well as the drawer, well, the artist. That's the only thing I could come up with on that. But anyways, back to this. He's attacking Bleeding Fool and Bounding into Comics over at the Mary Sue. Yeah. In their fight with Eric July, however, they finally exposed themselves and the basis of CBR's attacks. Politics, pure and simple. CBR was actively ignoring some of the biggest stories in independent comics simply because they didn't like the politics of the creators. Despite the fact the same creators were breaking sales records with their crowdfunding campaigns. In fact, Ethan Van Sciver was putting up numbers for his Cyberfrog that were comparable to some of Marvel Comics' top sellers, but CBRs consistently ignored the news. Of course they did, because it makes them look bad. If this person they want to label as some evil Nazi, right? He's making as much money, if not more money, than the big two, these super heroic SJW companies. Yeah, we hate racism. We hate homophobia. We hate this. We hate that. You should tolerate everybody, and yet they end up being the most intolerant people in the world. So, you know, you know. Anyways, Yeah, when they're making as much money, when people are talking about how Marvel and DC and how mainstream comics the sales are going down, and indie comic sales are going up, then it's like, okay, that's definitely going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. But instead of realizing from their error and moving forward and moving on and getting back to what they should be doing, they just double down on what they do and just continue to sink into the quicksand. Let's see. All these stories say who the writer is nowadays. Yeah, that's probably true. But it doesn't necessarily mean um, that he still would maybe he decided to ignore it, but for some reason. Maybe they just saw Ethan as the bigger target for some reason. Maybe the writer's not as well known. Maybe attacking the writer wouldn't have as much of an impact for them that attacking Ethan would, because Ethan's got the name recognition. Again, this is just my speculation and speculative answers to your questions there. Anyways, Eric July's Rippaverse was likewise raising millions in crowdfunding and was also ignored by CBR. So they were comfortable trashing these guys on social media, but refused to report on their indie comics on their comic book resources website. That's censorship. While we admit we're biased at Bleeding Fool, we don't ignore newsworthy comics news, no matter who it involves. And from what I've seen, that's true. I mean, I can kind of agree with that statement right there. Um, as someone explains, this was the moment they admit that, quote, CBR is a left wing political blog, not a comic book news website, unquote, adding that it is a, quote, rare moment where the mainstream entertainment media admits its political bias, unquote. Somebody goes on to demonstrate that CBR, or at least its writers, had been crafting, quote, a coordinated narrative, unquote, against independent creators who hold political beliefs that are different from their own. This is bias and this is bigotry. Earlier this year, editor in chief and former Newsarama editor Chris Arendt was blowing the clarion call for Newsarama's co founder Michael Doran stepped down after decades at the company. The fear was palpable. Mm. Yeah, that is more ignored the writer because he wasn't most likely a conservative. That could be it too. Is I still on Read Comics Online? Um, I don't know. I don't think it would be, but I can check because that's actually a site. Well, actually, I have Read Comics Online. I don't know if that one is the one you're talking about, but nope, not on Read Comics Online. And I don't think it would have been either because Read Comics Online focuses more on mainstream stuff. Not to my knowledge, J.R. Exner. I do have first issue. Could show it off in Discord sometime. Thanks. I don't want any more $70 to $90 American books. All right. So, anyways, let's kind of try to wrap this up here. Let's see. Where are we at on time here? 45. So I got us quick the pace a bit. All right. Full disclosure: my own interactions with Arendt may best be described as hostile. He hoped to do a hit piece on conservative creator Mike Barron until Michael Doran stepped in to respectfully make things right. Fast forward to this summer, and now a reckoning seems to be taking place at CBR. Beginning in May of this year, the company began to undergo a major staffing upheaval. First reported by Pop vs. Graham McMillan. According to McMillan, also no friend of the same indie publishers and creators, CBR's now former editor-in-chief, Adam Swiderski, announced via LinkedIn that, quote, my time at CBR has come to a close as I was laid off by Valnet this morning, unquote. It's worth mentioning that Swiderski's departure took place less than a year after joining the company last July. Afterwards, in an internal Slack message obtained by McMillan, CBR explained they were, quote, undergoing major structural changes, unquote, related to both culture and performance, unquote. But the firings weren't done. Even more high-level editors at CBR were let go over the Memorial Day holiday. Within the next 4 weeks, CBR would not only let go over 3/4 of their editorial staff, but lose their HR team and a substantial amount of like-minded staffers who voluntarily left in solidarity. Yeah, good luck finding a new job or creating a new company. These guys, you're going to probably see these people out in the streets, right? Sounds like some of the higher ups at CBR are finally tired of the left-leaning BS and are just finally cleaning house. With ideologues in the industry and access media like McMillan were clutching their pearls, the biggest question on their mind and ours was the line from that internal memo that CBR was, quote, undergoing major structural changes related to turning the corner on both culture and performance, unquote, which mentioned that there would be more focus on, quote, individuals who can create a more positive culture going forward. Yeah, I would wonder if that was kind of code for, yeah, we're not going to have people attacking creators anymore or trying to push leftist agenda because it's hurting our bottom line. No one was beside himself. You see, even though I've shown you repeatedly throughout the post some of the, quote, cultural problems, unquote, that were emblematic at CBR, guys like Graham McMillan cannot see it because he shares their same bigoted ideology. Whisper Network outlet The Beat reported that Swiderski, Girding, and Baggett were all removed for, quote unquote, standing up for writers and, quote unquote, pushing back against changes Valnet instituted, reporting that, quote, writers were being asked to do more work while shrinking the pay-per-view rates, unquote. This makes them sound heroic, but the simple fact of the matter is that many of the CBR's journalists are also churning out clickbait for $5 an article. It makes them money, and because it makes them money, most readers have come to treat them like the shills they are, or just ignore them. This will slow down traffic and then slow down revenue. and eventually the site dies. The reporters have regularly supported whatever the current quote-unquote thing is and will never criticize the studios or mainstream publishers unless they fall out of line with their ideology. It's boring and cringy after a while. No one wants to read that anymore. Mm-hmm. Unlike Graham, Eric July has been enjoying the news. Whether or not CBR plans to replace the staffers they cut loose, still unclear. But their About page lists um, only 4 staff members, with many positions being filled by one person. Oh wow, it does sound quite a bit like CBR is just cleaning house. Hey, Metal's here. Let's see, where were we last? All right. Happy America Day. Hey, Metal. And then Rick says, hey, Metal. All right. So if you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the link, seeing if we can get some more friendly people in here. Um, also, if anything we talk about, feel free to comment and or ask questions on, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, now we're done with the articles. So why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about what's been going on in the world of pro wrestling over the last day here. So, first off, on the WWE front, of course, last night they did have last night's Monday Night Raw. Let's see, and we know that now Brock Lesnar made his return last night as they were preparing his match with Cody to be announced soon at WrestleMania at SummerSlam rather. Let's see, Damian Priest last night defeated Shinsuke Nakamura. In a number one contenders turmoil match for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles, Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville defeated Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, Dana Brooke and Tegan Knox, and Emma and Nikki Cross, and Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. Alpha Academy defeated the Viking Raiders in a mixed. Alpha Academy with Maxine Dupree defeated the Viking Raiders in Valhalla in a mixed 6-man tag. Rhea Ripley retained the women's world title over Natalia. Matt Riddle defeated Giovanni Vinci of Imperium. And then in a non-title match, Seth Rollins defeated Dominic Mysterio. As I said, Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey confronted each other last night as Ronda was seeking answers to why Shayna had betrayed her. Let's see. I have devoured the Borgers and the Dogs of Heat. Okay. Laugh out loud. Anyways, so with all that, so now, of course, with Money in the Bank done, now they're building everything towards SummerSlam next month, I believe. So we'll be getting more news on that. On the AEW side of things, of course, tomorrow night on Dynamite, on tomorrow night's Dynamite, of course, the final quarterfinal match in the women's bracket of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament will be having after being postponed a week due to Dr. Britt Baker getting sick. So Ruby Soho will be taking on Dr. Britt Baker in that quarterfinal in a rematch from last year's final. Also, the blind eliminator tag tournament going on. Quarterfinals are going. 2 quarterfinal matches are going to be happening there. The winner of this is going to be getting a shot at the AEW World Tag Team Championships. Now, the blind eliminator tag team tournament was set up in a way much akin to the old Lethal Lottery back in WCW, in which teams are randomly put together to participate in this tournament. The winner of this tournament. So you'll have Adam Cole and MJF, who were announced a couple weeks ago as a team in this tournament. They'll be taking on a set of mystery opponents. And then Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland will be taking on Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin in the other quarterfinal match. And also scheduled for tomorrow night, Kenny Omega, coming off of his loss to Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door, will be taking on the Blackpool Combat Club's Wheeler Yuta as the Elite BCC feud continues to roar there. Now, earlier, I guess, technically it might have been last night our time, but early this, let's see, or actually it might have been early morning our time. Essentially last night. Don't slam Summer. Summer is a good thing. SummerSlam is the name of the pay-per-view. Rousey is a name I know. She came from my biggest interest, competitive martial arts. Yeah, she is a mixed martial artist who actually she's had a couple of stints in the WWE in the past 5 years. Her time is winding down in the WWE, as they said she's got a finite day to finish, and a big reason behind the reason they set this thing up was Baszler turning on Rousey, because Rousey, before she left the WWE, she claimed she wanted to work a feud with Baszler, who is also another mixed martial artist, believe it or not. So, anyways, getting back, so AEW also did, some of their athletes were participating in some New Japan events, notably early this morning our time, last night. So coming from Korakuen Hall in and I guess it's supposed to be day one, pay-per-view New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Independence Day. You had Bad Dude Tito defeat DKC. Team Filthy, comprised of J.R. Kratos, Jarrell Nelson, and Royce Isaacs, defeating Alex Zane, Lance Archer, and Ryohei Oiwa. Tom Lawler of Team Filthy defeated Kosei Fujita. Eddie Kingston and Rocky Romero teamed up to defeat the Bullet Club members of Gedo and Kenta. Momo Kogo and Will Nightingale defeated Mafia Belia, Julia, and Thekla. And then the 2 teams of the Bullet Club War Dogs, they actually won championships. Let's see, Alex Coughlin and Gabe Kidd defeated the team of Bishamon for the strong openweight tag team titles. Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. Bullet Club, the other team known as Bullet Club War Dogs, or then that of Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney, won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title over Catch-22 of Francisco Akira and TJP. And in a Doomsday no disqualification match, El Desperado and Jun Kasai defeated the NWA's Homicide and AEW's John Moxley. So there you go there with the wrestling wrap-up. It paid for PBV. I was just, I know. Okay, yeah, I know it was a pay. I was just joking, using a pun, as it is what I do. Okay, I just wasn't aware if you were aware of that or not, Rick. That's why I put it out there. So, anyways, now we got through all that, so now it's a good time to start wrapping things up here. Now, a good time to start wrapping things up, as we will be looking at this day in Nietzsche history. History! Let's see now. 2003. Okay, so without any further ado, let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. Today being July 4th, 2023, Independence Day here in the States. Take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. And we go back 40 years ago today, as on this date 40 years ago today. Now, I don't know if, I know this more from your neck of the woods. This would have been from your neck of the woods. Metal. I don't know if you were alive yet or you were born yet when this happened, but on this date, 40 years ago today, from the Tarrant County Convention Center in Fort Worth, Texas, World Class Championship Wrestling, in conjunction with the NWA, held its Independence Day Star Wars event. The main event, of course, saw the Von Erichs defeat the Fabulous Freebirds to become the new World Six-Man Tag Team Champions in a best-of-3 match. David, Kerry, and Kevin Von Erich defeated the Fabulous Freebirds of Terry Gordy, Michael Hayes, and Buddy Roberts. Earlier in the night, David Von Erich defeated Jimmy Garvin for the vacant NWA Texas Heavyweight title as well. In a lights-out match to start off the show, Michael Hayes defeated Iceman King Parsons, and then also you saw Bruiser Brody and Kamala battle to a double DQ. So on this date, 40 years ago today, World Class Championship Wrestling held its Star Wars event, Independence Day Star Wars event on that show. Now, moving ahead to 2013, on this day in 2013, Camp Lake Bottom, produced by let's see, Skywater Media and Entertainment Group for Teletoon and Disney XD, premiered on Teletoon on this date 10 years ago today. So on this date 10 years ago today, Camp Lake Bottom premiered in Canada on this date 10 years ago today. So anyways, moving on to next piece. And 2013 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As on this date as well, the following anime premiered in Japan on this date 10 years ago today as well. Chronicles of the Going Home Club from Nomad. Lurche's Danganronpa, the animation. Kyoto Animation's Free. Studio Dean's Rosen Maiden. Zeruxpelin. Satellite's Syphnogear G. And Gynax's Stella Women's Academy High School Division Class C. So those animes made their premiere in Japan on this date 10 years ago today. And now we go up to 2018, as on this date in 2018, I'm sorry, yeah. On this date in 2018, 5 years ago today, the 290th issue of Archie's Double Digest went on sale on this date 5 years ago today. It was 192 pages, sold for $6.99. So on this date 5 years ago today, Archie's Double Digest number 290, also known as Jumbo Comics, went on sale on this date 5 years ago today. So that's all we have for you guys tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here with more niche news tomorrow. Also, of course, and likely if there is an independent indie comic showcase, we'll probably be focusing on that tomorrow. Also, don't forget this Friday, I'll have Rick Piper with me as my co-host as we continue our look back at November of 1939, as we will be we'll be looking over some Archie comics, MLJ Enterprises Incorporated. On that date, we'll be looking at Pep Comics number 1, introducing you guys to some heroes, including the Shield and the Comet. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.